You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies, Dial of Destiny edition, Box Office Bomb edition. Man.
It's not going to bomb more than Flash.
Well, the problem is it's way more expensive than Flash. This is one of the most expensive movies ever made. It cost, after advertising, I mean, Disney is always coy. Every studio is always coy about these numbers. But we are looking at something in the realm of about $450 million spent on this movie with advertising.
Are you kidding me?
Which is ridiculous. It's not.
If you're going to spend that much money on a movie, it should look like it.
Yeah, it would be nice if that money was up on the screen. But yeah, it's one of those things where
Indiana Jones should be able to market itself. Just make the good movie, for goodness sake.
And if they'd spent less money, if they'd had to, let's just boringly crash together some real tuk-tuks instead of creating computer tuk-tuks, suddenly we have a movie that everybody would be much more excited about. And they could even market. This is the other thing I heard somebody say, and I've been thinking about this. The amount of goodwill and marketing they could have done if they were like, 80-year-old Harrison Ford is pulling a Tom Cruise. And obviously he wouldn't be able to do anything like what Tom Cruise does, but if they just did the lame 80-year-old version of he's doing his own stunts, he's held onto that motorcycle, and they really could have, even if it was relatively sedate and not that great, that's such a cool hook, and Harrison Ford would be so excited and probably did want to do as much as like the lame practical version of this movie that's more in line with the motorcycle chase from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull than anything else would be so much more exciting and probably sell more tickets. Anyway, folks, we are here.
Well, you know what this movie would need for that? Someone who is good at directing action sequences. He would still need that person. Because we didn't have that person.
I mean, I don't know. Did you not
you
like
think I'm being unfair?
Well, no, I'm not to this movie, but did you think the action was bad in Ford versus Ferrari? Because I didn't. I thought it was pretty exciting. No. But it was all chase
I have
stuff,
thoughts about
right?
Yeah, it was all chase stuff, but I just have thoughts about Mangold and what he's good at and not good at.
I will tell you,
and
I think it's all pretty clear now.
I will say the first Wolverine movie, I didn't like Logan. It was just obvious and gory, but the first Wolverine movie that he did has terrible action scenes that are very much in line with this.
Right.
I never watched any of those movies.
That's right.
So,
that's what I was going to say. The
you have
only
more
fun action scene
for him than I do.
He has a fun problem. He's just not very. I think that what works about Ford v Ferrari is that those race sequences are like drama suspense sequences. They're not like typical bang bang chase.
But that's what's exciting about some of the. So you got the truck chase scene, or you've got the basket chase scene. If you're thinking of Raiders, right? Like those work as drama suspense more than they work as some kind of bang bang action sequence, right? Like that's what's exciting. Like so when he was announced, I was like, hey, maybe they found a guy who will bring a little bit of that early Spielberg magic. Like I was kind of excited because I'd only really seen Ford versus Ferrari and maybe just seen it and thought there's a lot of storytelling in these action sequences that it'd be nice if you had more of that drama.
Yeah, I don't know if he wasn't allowed to do it, or I think he is bad. It is in line with his badness that I've seen. I mean, the Logan action scenes are just like kill, 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 kill. Nothing very exciting there unless you're excited by little girls stabbing a guy with claws, which I suppose people were. But there's not much in the way of ingenuity, even at the level of like a John Wick murder fest kind of ingenuity.
This is semantics, Jake. It's if I were to just go back and watch those race sequences, maybe I could tell you the difference. But there is some kind of like Spielberg is having fun, and Mangold doesn't. Mangold is like he's pure like serious mode when it comes to how he's going to do things. There's some kind of ineffable sort of thing with difference between say a race and Ford and the truck chase. And
for me, it's most
Raiders.
clear in probably the best action scene in the movie, but it's still not great, which is the ticker tape parade sequence. And it's just like, can you imagine the visual gags that Spielberg would come up with the inflatable astronauts. And
yeah, it would be so fun.
It's in terms of an Indiana Jones set piece, it's such a wasted opportunity. Like you could just, even old man Steven Spielberg, who doesn't like to do this kind of stuff anymore, in his sleep, he would come up with 10 fun ideas. Maybe they'd be the Crystal Skull CGI silliness that we wouldn't like, but they would still be like, even the worst of Crystal Skull, even when it's total George Lucas CGI fest, it's still like, we're doing a Tarzan thing now.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that's supposed to be fun. That's an idea. That's a visual gag.
Yeah, that's an idea. Yeah.
And I went back and I watched the Raiders. I was like, what is the difference? I want to put my finger on it. It's amazing how slowly relative those old scenes are edited so that you really can see the setups and payoffs and the geography. Like, and it really, like you guys are saying, it really is about suspense as much as anything. It's the Nazis are creeping up the truck. They are going to get in, and there's
a whole host of Nazis just sitting in the back of the truck, and they're going to take their time coming one by one or two by two. And so it's like, okay, now this guy's had his turn, and now it's next up. And it's all just sort of like, I think of, so I watched this movie, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I watched this movie with my son Ian, who is the kind of kid who is like Spielberg is cracked to him because he lives on the edge of his seat in these movies, right? So if you can keep him on the edge of his seat, like it's not hard. But so I think of it through him. It's just like tension. Like that's what's fun. And especially if you're a kid or if you want to feel like a kid. Mm-hmm. Which is where we're at in these movies is you want to feel like a kid again. And that's the one thing that Spielberg and Lucas both understood on one level. I mean, what they thought was, if you think of the prequels, right? Lucas is like, well, these are always kid movies. I'm just going to keep making kids movies. And one of the criticisms that everybody has about him is like, yeah, but we are adults now and we wanted to feel like kids again. And instead we felt like you didn't care about us.
We don't actually want Jar Jar stepping in,
right?
Bantha fodder or whatever. Like that's fart humor.
Yeah, we didn't come for that.
Just like in Kingdom of Crystal Skull, we didn't come for CGI gophers or sword fighting while straddling two trucks. It's like that's beyond what we want.
Yeah, but then you can look back after the fact and appreciate the fact that in terms of character, nothing actually changed. You did.
Yeah, those guys got old and out of touch in some ways, especially with Crystal Skull.
I'm not saying that they're retroactively of the same caliber quality as Raiders or anything like that.
But it's like,
but you're saying the same spirit kind of.
You feel like old man Spielberg tried to channel his 14-year-old self and kind of fail in Crystal Skull, but that's still better than Mangold. Not even for a moment trying.
Mangold has a fun problem. Yeah, he has a fun problem. I just don't think he understands fun. I think he understands serious drama, and that's what he wants to do. Even with his car chase, he's just not gonna. Well, he's not gonna go for sight gags and silly and payoffs that are like jokes.
Well, it doesn't even feel like an understanding problem. It feels like a choice problem.
Yeah, like he's just like, I'm not going to do. I mean, if you even think about the violent shootout in the bar, in Marion's bar, which is a very R-rated feeling scene in a PG movie. It's pretty brutal. But there's all this stuff where it's like, Indy's going to say whiskey, please, and then she's going to hand him a whiskey, and then he's going to bash the guy's head. And
it's a very John Wayne bar fight, right? Actually, in that sense,
it's just amped up to 11 in terms of the violence, but basically it's gag, gag.
That's right.
Even the bloody a guy's going to get shot. It's like you're going to shoot, and then the bullet's going to bounce around and zip around, and then the guy's going to get shot, and blood's going to come out of his mouth. So it's violent, but there's a wit to the way the story is told. And there's just simple setups and payoffs. I mean, with the tuk-tuk chase in particular, which is, I guess, the closest thing this movie comes to a big, exciting chase scene. Mm-hmm. It's like it's just stuff that's happening. There's not a lot of setup. There's not a lot of payoff. It's just frantic sort of action. There's moments that you kind of are like wish, or they almost come close. You know, she's going to knock the bale of hay around so that the guy runs into it. But it's like Spielberg would have literally 40 of those moments or something like that. The scene would just be built of those moments.
Yeah. I remember. I still remember one edit from that scene that caught my eye last night, and it's like the car, because Mangold has these fairly intricate shots. They're not interesting, but they are pretty complex. And so it's like the tuk-tuk zips around one corner and then another. And as it zips around a corner out of sight, the camera moves a little to the left and the shot ends on a close-up of a camel. And it's like, okay, Mangold, did you think that you were adding color or something here?
There are
Because
so
this
many
camel,
little things like
you
that
didn't
that
set
feel
up anything.
arbitrary, just completely arbitrary.
They
It's
are
like
arbitrary.
He has no idea
He doesn't understand
why Spielberg or Lucas made similar choices and why they worked for them.
That's right. That's right. He doesn't get it. Yeah, I think he is choosing, but I don't think he understands fun. I really don't. I mean,
well, he doesn't. I mean, the movie's not fun.
It feels aggressively anti-fun, down to the fact that we're going to rub our nose. You're going to rub the audience's nose from the beginning, and there is going to be nothing supernatural about anything in this movie whatsoever. This is not supernatural. This is math. This is science. This is anti-supernatural. Like, just even that felt like aggressive. Like, there's so many choices, both in the story and in the storytelling, that just felt aggressively anti-fun.
Aggressively anti-fun, and Jake and I were talking about this before off mic, but just mean-spirited. Like, yeah. I couldn't believe we're going to have our short round kid murder a guy, a Nazi, albeit.
Yeah,
but
that sucks.
You're just going to handcuff him underground and leave him there to drown.
Yeah, when you've already gotten through the hole and you've actually gotten away, and when this character is set up as the fun antagonist henchman in every Indiana Jones movie, there's a fight with a big guy. And Indiana Jones is completely out of his depth, and then the guy gets drawn into a rock crusher or helicoptered to death or eaten by ants or something ridiculous. But always we look forward to the fight with the big guy, and there's
going to be some serendipitous fun death for the big guy,
and it just feels aggressively anti-fun to A, not give us that action scene, but then B, have this kind of cruel, cold.
Yeah, we're going to give you the big guy. We're going to have him in there. We're going to set this all up, and then we're going to undercut it. And it's like, it just leave it cruel and cold and nasty. And
it almost, in that case, it almost feels like they had a scene where the guy escaped and Indiana Jones fought him, and they just cut it out or something, because it's weird that we don't see the guy die. I mean, I know the movie's trying to be not too violent,
PG.
but also it's like, I think Walter Shaw said this in his review. He's like, they're going to have this really cold death, and then they're not going to have the guts to watch the poor sap drown. Like, you can't have you're really having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah,
here, guys, and just the amount of civilian deaths and
all of the innocent people that die to set up how bad the Nazis are.
Oh yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah,
and now I get it. White supremacists are bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that stuff happens, and then it doesn't. But none of that makes sense plot wise. Like, the movie does not make you suspend disbelief.
3 different women. A white woman, a black woman, and an Asian woman.
Yeah,
and there's definitely nothing going on there in our storytelling.
So that we can say that Nazis are bad. I mean, even just at the beginning, Indiana Jones saying, "To the victor goes the spoils," and kind of kicking the guy off the train. It's like,
that stinks too.
I mean, we can't be too sentimentalizing about the old Indiana Jones movies. They definitely have a nasty streak and a vicious streak to their violence. I don't want to say that they don't, but you don't usually get Indiana Jones just having a cool kill line and then murdering somebody who's already down. Usually it's like he outwits the person. The worst thing that he does is like, all right, I can't beat this guy. I'm going to shoot him. I mean, I guess, but that's just played as such a joke.
Well, I still remember Roger Ebert reviewing this. There's a Kurt Russell movie where he has to save his kidnapped wife from a trucker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend it. I forget what it's called. But anyway, at the end of it, like, the truck falls off a bridge, or the trucker's down, like he's at the bottom of a little chasm, and the truck is hanging off a bridge, and Kurt Russell looks down at him on the rock, and he's still alive. And then he pulls the brake back so that the truck falls and crushes the guy as he lies there helplessly. And Roger Ebert was like, that's not any good. Like, that, no one needs that. Like, don't have your hero just kill the bad guy in cold blood. That's not how these movies work.
I mean, James Bond always felt special because that was his thing. James Bond had a license to kill, and so you'd have the scene where there's literally a scene in a Roger Moore movie where the guy is dangling in a car over a cliff, and Roger Moore just kicks it off. Like, the whole thing about this guy is that he's cold.
Yeah, you can do that with a James Bond. You can do that with a John Wick. You can't and shouldn't do that with Indiana Jones. And so part of the fun of Indiana Jones is, like, we get to see a bunch of Nazis get the crap murdered out of them, but it's never set up to feel so cold or bad. Like you don't, there's always some plausible deniability in almost all the kills. Like, it's going to be, it's all self-defense. He's outmatched. He's getting the crap kicked out of him. He's going to outwit somebody. He's just going to duck while the propeller takes out the guy. He's going to the dude's foot got caught. Like nothing you can do about that. Like, now there's going to be supernatural intervention. Y'all were too stupid you thought you could mess with divine things or with, and so there's always a sense of justice and a sense of fairness that comes through in those scenes that you can pick it apart on reflection, but in the moment, if you're a kid or if you're just sort of there along for the ride, it doesn't feel so mean-spirited.
Yeah, even the way the guy that gets chopped up in the propeller goes out in Raiders, it's like you literally cut to a swastika getting drenched in blood, and it's just like, okay.
It's so cheeky.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. This guy was the mechanic that just wanted to have a fist fight, but he was going to punch Indiana Jones to death. He was already halfway through doing it, and Marion was trapped in the thing. It's like we're intentionally setting up all the circumstances such that the one solution is the solution that we get. I guess with like a James Bond, when James Bond coldly kills somebody, that's a point that the story is making. And I don't mind that. You can write a story or make a story about a cold killer, but it's the fact that this movie wants to have those same things happen and just assert that that's how normal, non-cold people behave. It's like if you were making a story point over the fact that Teddy, our fake short round, handcuffed this guy and let him die, I guess you could tell that story. I don't know why you'd want to, but the fact that it's just
what it is, it's not
thrown away.
You know what it's not? It's not a kid's movie at that point. It's not fun kids storytelling. Like kids feel that tension, that they still have something of a sensitive conscience, and it's aggressive towards the kids. It's aggressive towards the audience. It's aggressive towards everybody. It's just mean-spirited.
That's true. I'm Nathan. That's Jake.
Hey, what's up, guys?
That's Ben.
Oh, hello.
We are talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny short version. A terrible movie.
So bad.
It's so bad. Ben, I think you did prepare some context about archaeology.
Oh boy, I sure did. Hey guys, I don't want to burst.
You may think you know what you're dealing with, but believe me, you don't.
Don't step on the audio.
Sorry.
Ben.
I'm sorry about that. I was like, what's happening? There's a bunch of static in my ear. I'm calling in folks, so it's hard for me to tell what's going on. Anyway, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but I have to tell you that Indiana Jones is not exactly realistic as an archaeologist. So sorry about that. You've been hanging on to that. Here, I'm just going to read you a couple things that I found about real archaeology. Here's what William Parkinson says. You know him, old William Parkinson, your buddy. He's a professor at the U of Chicago. So here's what he says. We have a rule of thumb: for every hour of in-field excavation, you spend at least 3 or 4 hours in the lab documenting and analyzing, trying to put it together as a narrative. Because what I tell my intro to archaeology class is if you spend 20 years meticulously excavating an archaeological site and you never publish your findings, and you've just spent 20 years looting, there's no point. If you're not publishing, you're not any better than the Tomb Raider. So that's what he says. Speaking of which, Lucas's original vision of Indiana Jones was closer to a Tomb Raider or a bounty hunter, just someone who wanted to be paid by museums for stealing valuable artifacts and bringing them to said museums. Although I know that Temple of Doom, which I've never seen, doesn't he return those magic stones to the village they go to?
Yeah, Temple of Doom makes a kind of half-hearted prequel attempt to tell the story of Fortune and Glory Indy turning into Noble Indy. But then they sort of retcon that in Last Crusade, where we find out that young Indy already was, like many things, I don't think they actually had a cohesive idea of what these movies were going to be. What is clear is that George Lucas always favored, for better or worse, always favored things being darker and more morally compromised. He certainly is responsible for Marion being whatever age she was when they first got together, and all those kinds of cheeky sort of, this guy's not actually a hero stuff are very George Lucas of the time. George Lucas, maybe not so much anymore. I think he got a little cuddlier after he got his nasty divorce out of the way during the making of Temple of Doom. But anyway, be that as it may. So I think George Lucas always probably would have been more in favor of the Tomb Raider kind of different woman every movie, kind of a little bit more James Bond. But anyway.
Okay. Well, I did find this tongue-in-cheek article that argued, only kind of argued, that Indiana Jones represents the last of the old school archaeologists who were just treasure hunters. And by that metric, man, he did a good job. He even got 1 out of 6 artifacts back to a museum. Amazing, which was the Cross of Coronado in the Last Crusade.
Right.
But people archaeologists do appreciate that the Indiana Jones movies make people want to be archaeologists. And Parkinson said, quote, "Vast amount of my job is spent in front of my computer writing boring grant applications so people will give me money so I can meticulously dig archaeological sites. What I love about Indiana Jones is despite all the historical inaccuracies and the mystical part of it, makes people excited about the discipline. And if that gets a couple more kids in my intro to archaeology class, and then I can rope them into the science part, all the better." John Rice Davies claimed that that's Sala, or
Gimli.
I have a Gimli. Yeah. I suppressed a mean joke about his appearance in this movie. Oh man, is he shriveled? Oh boy. So John Rice Davies claimed that he says, quote, "I must have met at least 150 or 160 full professors, lecturers, practicing archaeologists who have come up to me to say their first interest in archaeology began when they saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's not a bad legacy for any film," unquote. Today, most archaeologists I found work in a field I had never heard of because I don't know anything about archaeology. This is cultural resource management. Have you guys heard of CRM? CRM? The exciting discipline of CRM?
I feel like I
Guess
know
what it's
something else
about.
that stands for CRM, but yeah, go ahead.
You do. It's like contact resource management, database term. So you make sure that historically significant sites remain protected under law. And this is like a United States thing. So it may be that there's a dig or there's a shipwreck or a Native American site, and then a private CRM company is hired to protect the artifacts. And if you were part of one of these companies, you might be doing a dig, like we think of archaeology via Indiana Jones. You might also be at a museum, like, how do I preserve this stuff? You might be a compliance officer. What are the regulations? You might be in a lab. And there's a culture, I'm assuming that this is fairly universal across countries, but what you do now is you don't say that belongs in a museum. You say that belongs to the native culture. So we probably shouldn't take it and put it in a museum.
Yeah, Phoebe Waller-Bridge charmingly points out that discrepancy in this film.
That's right. That was very charming. So last thing I have is that, this will shock you guys, Indiana Jones is not historically accurate when it comes to tombs with spears that are light sensitive and come out and hit you.
Huh.
Yeah, most tombs, it's only those compression stones that you step on, and then the spear comes out and hits you. Most people think that.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. Okay, that's none of that has ever happened. No booby traps, but I did read about the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor in China. And this is a massive tomb. This is awesome, actually. Built in the 3rd century BC. It's full of full-size buildings, like a palace for the dead emperor. And most people are familiar with this guy because of those famous life-size terracotta soldiers. Right.
I think Brendan Fraser fought those in one of those mummy movies.
He probably did. There's about 7,000 of them, full-size soldiers and horses. They've been on traveling displays for years. I saw them as a kid in an exhibit. I remember my grandparents taking me. They're cool. What I didn't remember is that every face is unique. Like every soldier is a distinct.
Well, that's because what you didn't realize is that Medusa is real, and she turned those armies into stone. And now we have a retcon story to hide the fact that Medusa was a real thing, man.
I think that's true.
I learned a lot on this podcast. I just learned something just now.
Now you know.
I can't trust Jake.
You didn't already know that?
Ben, you've been on this a long time.
I'm a very slow learner. So these were, if you know anything about these guys, you know that they were supposed to guard the emperor in the afterlife, the buried dead emperor. And so the site where they were found has not been fully excavated, even though we began to discover terracotta soldiers in 1974. The soldiers come from a giant necropolis around the tomb, right? A literal like city full of buildings. The tomb itself, where the emperor is, the tomb itself has, so the necropolis has all these other buildings. It's crazy. But the tomb itself has an underground palace and more full-size buildings, and that's still underground. And there's all this debate about how to excavate it or whether or not we should, because that would just damage everything irretrievably. But this is a long quote I want to read. This is super cool. This is from the royal historian Sima Qian, I can't pronounce his name. He made some claims in his first century BC book, Records of the Grand Historian. So this is what he claimed about the tomb. All right, here we go. In the 9th month, the first emperor was interred at Mount Li. Digging and preparation work at Mount Li began when the first emperor first came to the throne. Later, after he had unified his empire, 700,000 men were sent there from all over his empire. They dug through 3 layers of groundwater and poured in bronze for the outer coffin. Palaces and scenic towers for 100 officials were constructed, and the tomb was filled with rare artifacts and wonderful treasure. Craftsmen were ordered to make crossbows and arrows primed to shoot at anyone who enters the tomb. Mercury was used to simulate the 100 rivers, the Yangtze, Yellow River, and the Great Sea, and set to flow mechanically. Above were representations of the heavenly constellations, below the features of the land. Candles were made from fat of manfish, which is calculated to burn and not extinguish for a long time. The second emperor said, "It would be inappropriate for the concubines of the late emperor, who have no sons, to be out free," ordered that they should accompany the dead, and a great many died. After the burial, it was suggested that it would be a serious breach if the craftsmen who constructed the mechanical devices and knew of its treasures were to divulge those secrets. Therefore, after the funeral ceremonies had completed and the treasures were hidden away, the inner passageway was blocked and the outer gate lowered, immediately trapping all the workers and craftsmen inside. None could escape. Trees and vegetations were then planted on the tomb mound such that it resembles a hill. Unquote. So talk about some straight Indiana Jones. I mean, I'm just waiting for the report of a treasure hunter wandering too far inside and taking an arrow from a booby trap. But that is craziness. So as far as we know, that's true. But maybe we'll never dig in there and find out.
Well, by the way, I do want to say,
I think it's a story that they're telling in order to hide the fact that Medusa still lives there with the Nephilim who survived the flood. And this is an ancient part of the ancient underground. It's probably the gateway to the reptilian society, is what I think.
Huh. I think that's a really interesting idea.
Those
Jake.
stories exist in order to keep people from going there, and that's where also one of the places where the UAPs launch from, the ancient technology.
It's all coming together for me now.
Yeah, pre-flood ancient technology.
Literally all of it.
Yeah.
All of it is.
Just want you to understand. In those tunnels, they go straight to Antarctica. So,
Antarctica. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Which is why it's a no-fly zone.
Go straight to Antarctica. Then I'll see you in Antarctica. I do want to say, I have read enough about the rape of the Nile, the way that Egypt was treated in the late 19th century and early 20th century, to know that all these stipulations that Ben's talking about and the compliance stuff, maybe our audience is tempted to just think, oh, liberals, they never let us do anything fun. But I mean, there have been great treasures and great historical artifacts that would be really nice to have, but instead they've been plundered by treasure seekers. And the story of Egypt in particular is a story of us just losing, people going crazy for Egypt lore, and then very not worthwhile people taking advantage of that, plundering graves, making their own new mummies, old stuff, new stuff getting mixed up, really cool sites just being desecrated. And so I do think that there should be some regulation. The government does need to step in to protect history. I'm all for some of it still living in the British Museum and not being too not being too woke about the whole thing. But
sure,
I do think, there is
in the interest of real science and real history, a little bit of regulation and preservation.
Yeah, and insofar as these movies set up a conflict between Indiana Jones saying the Cross of Coronado belongs where we can study it, and this bad guy just wants it for whatever reason, I do think we can side with Indiana Jones. He's got a
makes
point
sense.
that philosophically I would align with anyway. I mean, it's all silly. And one thing that Ben points out is one of the silliest things about these movies is just the expense account that Indiana Jones is. Like the fact that Marcus's museum, I guess, is able to just pay for these adventures. Like it's like as if Indiana Jones wouldn't have to spend his life writing grants. I mean, I guess Brody writes his grants or something, but it's very silly.
Right. Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about the Dial of Destiny. It is a real artifact that was found in a Roman warship, the wreckage of an ancient Greek trading vessel in the early 1900s. And it is it's very much more dilapidated than what we see, but it is this gearish mechanism that they say it does not travel through time or find time fissures, if you can imagine that. But it does. A lot of people will still call it the world's first computer. Its gears could predict eclipses, track the movement of the sun and the moon, stuff like that. And there's some idea.
Pretty awesome.
People like to speculate, at least, that Archimedes did it simply because it exists in the right location for that battle that we see. Spoilers from here on out. The end of the movie, we see a battle. That battle is a real historical battle. Archimedes, a lot of lore about Archimedes using his mirrors and stuff like that to fend off the legions. That's where this device went down. And so it is actually a fun thing with a lot of lore. The movie doesn't do much justice to it. Yeah. But it's not
I've read about it.
It's not a half bad artifact for an Indiana Jones movie as these things go.
Yeah, it's an artifact that I actually knew about beforehand. I remember reading about the find on the ship and stuff like that and going down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Yeah, it's
because
cool.
Everything about Archimedes really is cool. Like,
yeah, it is. That guy was amazing.
Yeah, I think I've been slightly fascinated with Archimedes ever since I watched The Sword and the Stone as a kid. And
I was just thinking the same thing.
His owl Archimedes.
Yeah,
like the name sticks because of the stupid Disney show, or did to me, and so.
Well, and these ancient.
Yeah, and all the stories around him are just really cool. Like,
they are.
What did he really do? Like, and why is it such a mystery?
Giant claw to destroy ships and focusing the sun to burn. I mean, and these ancient scientist guys were all spiritualists too. So there is the lore of black magic that surrounds them. Alchemists from the Middle Ages are another example of that. Like they kind of feel like Merlin or something, because there's not this strict dividing line between the scientific physical world over there and then the spiritual world over here. And so they're trying to work with both most of the time. And so it is interesting to speculate just what they found in their studies.
Yeah, but this movie doesn't want to speculate about that. This is all cold math and science.
Yes, well, that brings us to, I guess, our...
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
A new fantastic point of view.
Good is a point of view, Anakin.
Good is a point of view, Anakin. That brings us to our point of view on this movie. I don't think we need to do baggage. We all love Indiana Jones. Obviously, we're born on this planet Earth, traveling around the sun together. So
are we?
I think we are. And so we love Indiana Jones. But
the reason I'm making these dumb jokes is because this is the kind of fun thing you actually want and have the freedom to play with in an Indiana Jones.
Yeah, if you're allowed
movie.
to do supernatural instead of just being atheists and doing the whole Marvel science.
All the lore, all the mythology, all of the everything is your sandbox. And so he already did, like, say what you want about Crystal Skull. It's a bad movie. We all think it's a bad movie. Nobody's trying to apologize too much, although we may have a little bit of retrospective on it in light of this movie, but whatever. Like, he was doing the interdimensional aliens thing 20 years ago or whatever that was. And like, that's the kind of thing that's in the zeitgeist now. And so it's like, you can play with that. You can play with the idea that maybe the terracotta are like, I mean, I know that the Mummy movies and National Treasure and Tomb Raider stuff have taken that stuff too far, but it is part of what's fun about these movies. You have a skeptic and...
Now, people always say it's dumb that Indiana Jones has seen all this stuff, but he doesn't believe it in the new movie. I love the fact that Indiana Jones resets every time into a skeptic and then has to I mean, I don't like it in a movie like this where they write dumb dialogue about, I've seen things and I've learned that you have to believe and blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
It matters how hard you believe.
Yeah, that's dumb.
That's just not Indiana Jones.
Doesn't even mean anything. But I do like just this guy always resets into basically a Jewish secularist, which is all that his creators were. And then he gets his mind blown by the supernatural
every time.
And has the humility to know it when he sees it and respect it when he sees it, which is cool. It's a nice conceit for a hero, but you would have to believe in a hero in order to make a movie that respected that.
Well, it's a commentary on, in that sense, on the modern Jew, on Spielberg himself. That sense of, or the modern atheist, or maybe the not so modern. I mean, maybe it doesn't work anymore, and that's the reason why we abandon it. But that I don't believe in God and I hate him kind of thing of it all. That inner sense that everybody actually does have. That God is God, God is real, supernatural things happen, and we're actually just suppressing it. We all know that we're suppressing it, and so we're going to cathartically let the lid off the box for half a second and let the angel of death come and let us know that we're all suppressing it, and then we're going to put the lid right back on that box. Like, that's part of the genius of the whole Indiana Jones conceit.
Right, and then he's a skeptic. He's not a believer. But he is, if you want to call him it, he's a God-fearer. He's like a God-fearing pagan. He's the kind of guy that when push comes to shove, closes his eyes and doesn't
Deep
look
down,
on the glory.
he knows.
Which is a cool, resonant conceit for a character. Much like the conceit for the character they had this time as an old, bitter, unhappy man.
Alcoholic.
That's a fun conceit for a character.
Got to be sure we see him put his
Nathan
brandy or whiskey in his coffee in the morning to get started. And
he just needed something to believe in. He needed something to live for, and he found it. Isn't that sweet?
He didn't find jack squat, man.
Arc.
He had it forced on him.
What a good arc. What did he find again?
Hey, you know what? We all need women who are going to be helpful to us, Jake. Just like having the kind of young woman who's going to punch you out in the face and drag you away and say, "You stupid old white man, I know what's best for you."
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. That gives me a sense of comfort.
You as a stupid old white man are incapable of having any self-knowledge or character growth or revelation. You just need a pretty brunette to tell you how your story should be.
Or a brunette like Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Hey, she's Ben.
I'm really mean. I'm really mean.
How dare you? She is attractive. She says so herself in the movie.
Look, she's not attractive playing this character. I don't think I would. Anyway, that feels really mean and low to say. I kind of regret it.
Well, you know what the interesting thing is? I'm sorry, but she's at her most attractive when she's pretending to be a wide-eyed, innocent character at the very beginning. And you know, because you've seen the trailers, that that's not actually what she is. But it's like, oh, I could just watch a movie about this character. It gives Indiana Jones something to bounce off of, kind of the sweet, bumbling character that's excited to pick up her dad's legacy. Like, that'd be fun.
Actually, Indiana Jones,
It's really unsettling how all these characters are. It's like, swap Daisy Ridley and her as Rey and as this character, and it's just like one-to-one. In how it's played, how it's written, it's amazing.
Yeah. Even little girl Leia in the Obi-Wan show, it's just like, I hate this kind of mind-reading criticism where everybody makes these assumptions. I don't usually like it, but it's really hard not to look at this and just say, okay, Kathleen Kennedy, you really love stories about pretty brunettes that know better than decrepit old white guys that they have to work with and for.
Yeah.
You've taken this company from your mentors, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
You found a little bit of space, you made your money, you were biding your time, and now you're putting the old man to bed, right? You were the true rebel who was there all along and
was smart, resourceful, whatever her dumb little speech is.
Yeah, and now you took the story by the reins and you gave them all the happy ending they were too stupid to give themselves. And you're putting them all to bed. And it's just like, man, the arrogance and the aggression is so off-putting and so disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, one test I have for female characters is, would I like this character if she were a man? And it's like, Helena Shaw sucks. I mean, she's an unpleasant person to be around no matter what sex she is. Like, she's smug, she's self-assured, she's arrogant, she's callow and selfish. Like, there's nothing to like about this character. And that could be part of an arc where she gets redeemed.
But nobody has an arc in this movie. She we don't have, for reasons, inexplicable reasons, she simply decides that she's going to do what's best for Indiana Jones. Like, what she's decided is best for Indiana Jones.
She comes to be morally sympathetic to him. She comes to feel sorry for him over the course of the picture, and that's her redemption, actually.
But it's weird that
because before that, she's just a bitter reminder of his moral failures. That's all that she exists to do. Well, why am I this way? Maybe you should have been there for me. That's all that she is.
Goddaughter.
Yeah.
My dad was insane. Maybe you should have
cared.
Yeah.
But you didn't. You're a terrible person. Okay. Yes, he is. He's a terrible person. You win. So are you.
I saw somebody on the internet point out the fact that Indiana Jones has gone in the course of 3 movies from having to connect with his father, his son, and now his goddaughter. Like they're really scraping the bottom of the deep resonant relationship barrel in order to find something.
More failures for him to have to own and suffer for.
Well, and just the idea that we in the audience, we've all got fathers. Many of us have been sons or have sons, but we're all like, yeah, I really didn't connect with my goddaughter. I should have done better.
I feel bad about that.
Right. I would do anything for my goddaughter. It's just like, it's not a relationship that we could really all enter into. I mean,
relationship with the daughter of a character that we didn't know existed prior to this movie. If this was, I mean, you could have done something with Marcus Brody.
If they weren't so committed to the lame CGI opening action scene, it would have been very easy to make this Marcus's daughter.
Right.
Which would have made much more sense and had much more
emotional resonance. We all love Marcus Brody.
Right. And yeah.
You could have retconned a Marcus Brody daughter story. Not that that's anywhere near the kind of story that you should have told if you're doing a 5th installment of Indiana Jones. But if you wanted to, you could have done that and gotten a lot more traction out of it.
Or have her be Sola's daughter and, give her you can bring in an Arabic chick, get some points that way.
Or
that would have been more fun.
Yeah, I mean, goodness. Have it be connected to Short Round, actually, somehow.
They missed such a bet because that guy...
He cleaned house just recently. It would have been such a smart play if you're just being executive studio smart to go back to the Short Round well, which is actually what my son said they should have done when he walked out of the movie. But
Short Round is actually the one emotional thread that never got closed by Spielberg. Like, Indiana Jones gets his happy ending. He's married. He has a son. You don't have to think that that's a great ending, but it's closure. Short Round's like the one kind of irresponsible dangling thread from young callow Indiana Jones's life. If you're just being sentimental and trying to close all these loops for people like Ian, for kids who actually invest in this stuff, Short Round's the thread to close.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I just want to give Ian's take on all this because I think it's really interesting. My 11-year-old's perspective. But
go ahead. I don't know how much more we're even going to have to say about this turkey.
So we come out of that movie. So I take Ian because most of my kids are going to go to a movie and they're just going to eat their popcorn and enjoy the movie. Ian's already got an idea of what he wants the movie to be or what he expects the movie to be. And he's going to come out of the movie thinking about the movie that he wishes they would have made or the movie that he would have made or that sort of thing. Like, he's the kind of kid who's going to, like, he listened to this, he goes down like soundtrack rabbit holes. So he got really into the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack. And so he wrote the whole Pirates of the Caribbean movie based on how he imagined the soundtrack playing out. And then we watched the movie and he was so disappointed because the music's heroic. And so he had this whole heroic pirate story in his mind. And then he got Jack Sparrow. I was like, what in the world? Like, he'd written his own Pirates movie based on the music, on the score. And so I thought it would be fun. He loves Indiana Jones. He'd probably say that Raiders is his favorite movie. He is the kid that just edge of his seat. Like Spielberg is his speed. Like old school Spielberg is exactly. Ian's there for the roller coaster. He's gonna like, and I mean literally on the edge of his seat or up, dancing, bouncing around. Like he loves the tension and he can't stand the tension, and that's why he thinks so much about it. Sort of like how Spielberg tells himself or casts himself in Fabelmans is so intensely affected by that train wreck that he's got to go and recreate it and think it through and tell his own story so that he can get some kind of control over. Like Ian's kind of like that. And so I thought it would be fun to go see this movie with Ian and hear his take on it. So we saw it. We came out of the movie and he was just really crestfallen and disappointed in the movie. It's like, I was really there for it. The young Indiana Jones stuff he was there for. And he was like, well, actually, the first thing he said is, he didn't die. They should have just killed him. And I was like, why do you say that? And he's just like, everything about, he said nothing about the movie once you got to old Indiana Jones mattered. Like nothing mattered. It was just boring. And so you have to make it matter. And then he said, I wish they would have just made the young Indiana Jones movie. And we just sort of like talked about it. Like we went to the store and we kept talking. I kept teasing out of him like, okay, what do you wish they would have done? Like why? And so he got to a place where he's like, what I wish they would have done is just told a brand new young Indiana Jones adventure, have it be CGI, have it be de-aged, have it be with Short Round. Let's get a new Short Round adventure. And let's have it be old Indiana Jones telling the story to his grandkids. And so he's a grandpa now. And so I was like asking him about that. Like, okay, is it like a reveal at the end that he was telling the story all along? Or is it, no, he's like, no, from the beginning, it's him telling it to his grandkids. Like Marion's there and the grandkids are there and maybe the grandkids interrupt the story along the way. It's not a reveal, but maybe when the grandkids interrupt the story or challenge it, like the story changes. And then you're able to just sort of like question everything about the Indiana Jones stories. But then it's all fun again. And then you can keep doing that and you can tell more Indiana Jones stories. But I just wanted to see, the other thing that he said was just like, I just wanted to feel like I was watching Raiders again. Actually, he didn't say Raiders. He said Lost Ark. But I just wanted to feel like I was watching Lost Ark again for the first time. And I don't know why they just made such a boring movie that didn't matter.
Which maybe there's some pedantic nerds listening right now who are like, you just wanted to feel like you were watching one of the 10 greatest movies of all time again, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that. But
if you can't recapture some of that flavor for, how old is he in?
He's 11.
An 11-year-old.
He'll be 12 in a month.
Like he would have been okay.
Or in a couple weeks, actually. No, a month.
I'm guessing if this had some level of joy and some level of competency, he might not have walked out saying, I saw a new Raiders, but he could have been excited about a new Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, he could have. I mean, he's not a snob. He just thinks and he cares. Like,
how does he like Crystal Skull?
He likes it a lot better than this one.
Yeah.
And he's not a snob about that one. He doesn't think it's as good.
But if this had been Crystal Skull, he probably
would have been much happier.
Much happier. A movie that seems to like its characters and.
Yeah, he asked me my opinion. Like, he was like, Crystal Skull's better than that, isn't it? Don't you think Crystal Skull's better than that, Dad? It's like, I don't know what I didn't answer it. I was just like, I don't know what I think about Crystal Skull in light of this movie yet, buddy. It's too soon for me to say. But he had an opinion. Like, he was thinking those thoughts too. I think he's right. You know? I think Crystal Skull is just a better movie than this one. And I think it's stupid. Like, before I saw the movie, I saw people prequeling Crystal Skull retroactively in light of this movie, trying to make Crystal Skull a good movie. And I hate that, but it's inevitable to have to go back and do that sort of thing and rethink something like Crystal Skull in light of a movie like this. I wish we could just sort of, there is a trilogy and that's it. And there are some other things that were done, but you can't. They're all in conversation with each other. And there are virtues to Crystal Skull that are in fact put into real relief by this trash movie. And so,
I mean, even some of the scenes that don't work. I watched the fist fight with the ant while the ants are swarming around them, and it's like, okay, it's not a good scene. The ants look stupid. But man, Spielberg on a bad day, and Crystal Skull is Spielberg on a bad day, but he still knows how to shoot action. He still knows how to shoot suspense. He still knows how to give you stakes and give you character through action. And he still knows how to have fun.
Just think, okay, part of the problem of Crystal Skull is actually that it just was during a transitional time where the CGI wasn't there, but everybody was transitioning and wanted to be on the cutting edge of CGI. And so Spielberg and Lucas went that route, and it made a movie that didn't feel like as much like Indiana Jones as anybody wanted, because it was so silly CGI, toying with some stuff like swinging through the trees and the ants. Like, man, if we had gotten to the other side of that, or if everybody at the time was just like, just do the practical effects stuff, dude. Like, but
yeah, I mean, if Crystal Skull just had the better photography, didn't have Janusz Kaminski doing the Oscar photography, that would be something.
Okay.
Well, Ben, we won't interrupt your vacation for much longer. Do you have any other thoughts before we let you go?
Just a couple. One is Mangold is a pretty technically precise director, and it's one of his strengths when it's in a good movie. But what I was just thinking how you could pull almost any frame of this movie. Well, okay, maybe that's too far. You could pull a lot of frames of this movie and be like, oh, Indiana Jones. Like, that looks more like Raiders or Temple of Doom or something. But then you pull any scene of this movie and you're like, man, this is a boring attempt to copy Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So on a frame by frame basis, it often works. Like, he's just going to capture the colors or whatever, leaving out the failures of effects sometimes.
No, this movie looks capture the more like an Indiana Jones movie than Crystal Skull does, and that is to its strength. And Crystal Skull would be vastly improved by just looking when you pause it, like this movie. That's what I was saying about the Janusz Kaminski photography. The fact that Spielberg used his Oscar guy, like the guy that he wins Oscars with, is what I mean by that, to do this kind of soft focus photography. It really does. I think for me, and I don't think this is just because I'm technically I know how movies work and pay attention to these things. I think on a subconscious level, a lot of people were probably affected this way. Crystal Skull does not look like an Indiana Jones movie, and that really hurts it.
Can I just say something? Can I throw a grenade on the table?
Sure.
I would have much rather have seen the Rian Johnson Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, that's probably true. Rian Johnson's not very good with action, but
but nobody is. Like, so the reason I said that is, like, in terms of feel and vibe, we all know The Last Jedi is the most Star Wars feeling Star Wars movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But he could just have had some actual fun with a character like Indiana Jones, and maybe have enough out of his system to show a little bit of love.
I mean, he would have at least had something.
Yeah, I could see it.
He would have created a character called Helena Shaw, and she would have done things and had an arc, and maybe we would have really hated it.
Her.
It would have been even more pointedly.
But it would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have been a guy with something to say instead of just like I hate this phrase, but instead of just a Mary Sue with nothing. She's not even a character.
It would have been a movie. Yeah. It would have been a movie worth hating. Like The Last Jedi, for all of it, is terrible, but it's a movie worth hating. This movie, I came out of the theater just like, this movie is a 0. Like,
it's just a waste of
things
life.
happen.
Is it even worth hating?
Talk about ritual decoupled from meaning. Like, things just happen for no reason. There are setups that never get paid off. There are things that happen that are never set up.
Oh yeah, can we talk about that? The craziness of, you have 3 minutes underwater, and then you imagine what Spielberg, the scene he would do with that. The complications, the thing getting caught, the eels, everything converging in this, and then the bad guys show up. Like,
and you would have a timer, like you'd have a wristwatch, you'd have something that you would flash to, that you would just be like, you're in the tension. There's a dramatic countdown that is happening now, and you'd feel it.
The idea of introducing Antonio Banderas only to fridge him. The idea of fridge being a term for when you kill someone, it's a nerd term for when you kill someone to up the stakes, taken from a comic book where a guy's girlfriend ends up in a fridge. But I'm not referring to nuke the fridge. I'm referring to the nerd term fridge. But yeah, there's like all these things that are set up. Voller and his henchmen set up as these individualized villains, only for them to have boring deaths. I mean, it's just like thing after.
Not a single interesting villain death in this whole thing. But
cruel,
a lot of cruel, mean-spirited ones, but nothing interesting. It's like, man, This is like anti-Indiana Jones in every way. We've got this really big, cool artifact thing, except we're not going to delve into any lore about it. We're going to undercut the lore. And it's going to be supernatural without being supernatural. We're going to call it science. We're going to have all these little things that like, we're going to, like you said, we're going to cut to the camel as if that's telling some kind of story. Or we're going to have Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, like, we're going through the tunnel and her flashlight keeps going out and we're going to keep drawing attention to it. But, oh, yep, we're not doing anything with that. Like, there's just like all these little details that are like, what is the point? Like, what are you doing? Do you think that Spielberg was ever arbitrary with these details? Like, is that what we're trying, like?
Well, and then the fact that this movie does not set up its central conflict, its emotional conflict at the end. The whole idea that India wants to live in the past, that's not really set up. I mean, I was talking to Jake beforehand, like, so easy to write a movie. Here's the joyful, fun way that actually I think Spielberg probably would do it. I mean, far be it from me to just play screenwriter, but the idea that Indiana Jones starts this movie happy. He's married to Marion. He's got his grandkids, and he's bored, and he longs for the old days, and he wishes that he wasn't an 80-year-old that's at death's door. And like, that's how you set up the movie that then has the payoff of this dude who wants to live in the past. I mean, that's maybe even a boring setup because it's so obvious. It's like, what, we've seen that story a million times.
But it doesn't matter. Give us a setup that makes emotional sense of the story you're going to pretend like you told when the movie's over.
Right. And set up Helena Shaw to be someone and then pay that off instead of just having her arbitrarily be what the story requires. Anyways, Ben, you were saying Mangold, technical filmmaker.
Oh, I was done. That was all. Yeah. That was all about how he made the film look like Raiders, frame by frame, but didn't capture any of Raiders.
Yeah,
none of the music of.
Yeah,
no.
Those lyrics doesn't know the music.
That's right. Yeah, I think the only other thing I said is that I thought as I was watching the movie was how bitter they pushed Indy into being, and it was actually one of the last things that he says. So after Helena Shaw punches him out and brings him back from the time of Archimedes, and he's like, "You should have left me there." She says, "No, you could have altered the course of history." And he's like, "What's so bad about that?" I usually don't mind time travel. I'm on record on this podcast. Nathan's a time travel curmudgeon and stuff like that. I'm a pretty loosey goosey, but one thing I can't stand is when I can't stand that remark. Because that's so bitter. That's like saying, if everyone I've ever known in my life and all the history I've ever known, all those people ceased to exist and I annihilated them because I stayed back in time, what would be so bad about that? It's like worse than the suicide. Mm-hmm. We know what Chesterton says, the suicide murders the world. Well, there is this idea in Indy's bitterness that if I just wiped you out, Helena Shaw, and me, and everything we knew for 2,000 years or whatever, so what? It's like, dude, that is such a bitter thing to say. Like, that is so nasty. And not that the movie cares. It doesn't really have any more weight. But so maybe this is neither here nor there. It's just that I've seen that in a book before. There was where the plot was, yeah, actually, in order to redeem history, we should go back in time and we should erase everything. We should erase everyone we know for 2,000 years because that would redeem. And so this all just struck me the same way. Like, you guys, that's super bitter. You don't even know the moral drama that you're playing with when he says that. You don't care. But man, what a mean. So I know, just one line, throwaway line.
Well, no, I think it's kind of like what we were saying about the villain deaths. It's like you can make a story point, an intentional story point out of I coldly dispatched a villain because that's where I'm at in my journey. James Bond does that all the time. We don't mind. But when you aren't making that point, when you're just kind of accepting, oh yeah, we coldly dispatch villains, that's when it begins to get bothersome. And it's the same thing with the line that you mentioned, Ben. You can make an intentional point that Indiana Jones is the most bitter, depressed, angry, wants to destroy the world man. But when you thoughtlessly throw it in there because you're bitter and you're woke and you hate civilization and you just are like, oh yeah, that's what the guy would say. It just has a real mean-spirited feeling. And I don't mind Indiana Jones starting in a bad place and working his way to some redemption, sort of. I mean, I think it's tricky with sequels. I think there's two kinds of bad sequels. There's the sequel that just does the same thing, that just rehashes stuff. There's the Men in Black 2, Ghostbusters 2 sequel that doesn't add anything or challenge the characters or take the story in any direction. That's obviously lame and nobody actually likes it. Then there are the sequels like The Last Jedi that so disrupt what we expect that we just don't even feel like we get our money's worth. Like you didn't uphold your end of the contract or filmmaker. Like I paid to see Luke Skywalker bust up and be awesome, and you needed to give that to me. Maybe you can make me wait for it. You can challenge me in the way that you get there. In fact, I want you to, but you better deliver that because I paid $10 for it. And the best sequels obviously are ones like The Empire Strikes Back or like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where we're challenging the characters, we're bringing them in a new direction, we're changing things up, but we're also giving the audience what they can reasonably expect when they buy a ticket. And I think when you buy a ticket to an Indiana Jones movie, what you can reasonably expect is good action for one thing. But from the character of Indiana Jones, what you can expect is, in a word, tenacity. I mean, Indiana Jones is a guy that never gives up. That's his whole thing.
And what you can do is you can have him be tired, you can have him be old, but the minute you bring something that sparks his imagination, he's got to care. And he's got to be then in it to win it.
And if you make a whole movie where Indiana Jones never locks in and is excited and cheerful and on the case and being Indiana Jones.
He can be reluctant all he wants at the outset, like every hero's journey. But the minute the Grail or his dad or the Ark is in sight, it's a real thing. He's in it. He cares. He's going to... And there are so many fun... Like, Indiana Jones he's part action hero, but he's part detective. So he's old. He's in his 80s. You can just have so much fun with the detective side of Indiana Jones and the problem solving, the code cracking.
Yeah, I think we'd really all be there for Indiana Jones just puzzling things, and then you give the action to the younger people. I don't think we'd be there for Phoebe Waller-Bridge being our action hero. But yeah, it's like, if you never actually give me Indiana Jones being tenacious and moving forward like the Energizer Bunny, not giving up, you have not given me the primary thing I pay for an Indiana Jones movie for. Like I always, you can have him be reluctant as you want through the first act, but somewhere in this movie, he needs to lock in and be excited and be doing his thing. Otherwise, I have not actually seen an Indiana Jones movie. You have broken contract. You've broken faith with me.
It's like you had you have that tablet, right? Like this is like the perfect example of this sort of thing. You've got the tablet, and Indiana Jones can totally set up the guys in that room by misreading the tablet for them or setting it up to mean one thing when it actually means another thing. And you can have all kinds of shenanigans like that are really actiony. Like you can set up all kinds of puzzle box type things, any kinds of like booby trap scenarios, false flags, different kinds of ways for him to outwit people and create action scenes that he doesn't even have to be that much a part of. He just set the Rube Goldberg device in motion, and he's just the guy pulling the strings.
Well, also, it would be relatively simple to de-age him. Like, de-aging gets more expensive. If someone's face has just changed a lot, then depending on how people age, it can be more expensive. But Harrison Ford has aged quite well. I mean, he's an old man now, but he does still look good for an 80-year-old. It would be relatively simple and inexpensive to de-age him 10 years. I mean, to actually give us something approximating the 60-year-old that we got in Crystal Skull. Like, we actually could have hung out with that version of Indiana Jones. And I shouldn't, I mean, I'm not a technician. I don't know. It's not, but I do know, like we need this beautiful actress to be 25 for a few more years than her biology actually has in her. They do that kind of thing all the time. You don't know it because they actually do that so well that you just don't know it. I mean, Jennifer Aniston's been doing this kind of thing now way past her prime. Like, just to take one extreme example, I'm guessing that there's this new raunchy comedy with J-Law that's out right now. Yeah. And she's probably our age-ish. Maybe she's a little younger. I don't know. But she doesn't have to be. She has a longer shelf life because of computers.
She's 32.
32. Yeah, okay. So, still probably a very attractive woman. But I'm just saying, like, she can go for longer being something approximating the new hotness. My only point in all of that being, we could have taken 10 years off of Harrison Ford. We could have taken 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could have gotten back down to Crystal Skull. They bit off more than they could chew in making him, you know, a 30-year-old. And then it felt like they were trying to age him actually. Like you wanted 90s Harrison Ford, you wanted fugitive era Harrison Ford to match the timeline, but they de-aged him into like Temple of Doom or like into 80s Harrison Ford. And it's like, actually, we wanted 90s Harrison Ford for this particular. What we wanted is for you to give us the 90s Indiana Jones movie that
never happened.
That never happened, where he actually does fight the Nazis in World War II. That's obviously what. Ben, did you get anything out of that opening scene? Or was that just the.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the voice.
Yeah, the voice is terrible.
The voice was terrible. Yeah, enough. I mean, what else do you have to say? They didn't age the voice, so it's terrible. No, the opening scene it's dull. I mean, it's trading on all your nostalgia, but he's not good at editing action. He's not good at setups or payoffs, as we were already talking about. Mangold isn't, and then there's fast close-up edits here and there that are just careless, and you can't even see what's happening with all the CGI that's added to it. And then it's just kind of a long scene of him doing stuff on a train that in Spielberg's hand would have been fun or funny or surprising or something, but it just doesn't. There've been so
many good train action scenes by now that you cannot have that be the opening action scene of your Indiana Jones movie without doing something fresh, original, and new with it. You just have to have a creative take on a train scene, or you can't do a train scene. It's so stupid and lazy.
I think there are a couple things that I will say. The bell being stuck around his neck with the bomb, that comes the closest to being like a Spielberg, like a classic Raiders kind of, Indiana Jones, he's in another pickle.
Yep.
That's a nice little moment, but it's not very well shot or choreographed, and the CGI is bad for his facial. Like real Harrison Ford, the actor in his prime, will be pulling so many goofy faces and kind of hamming it up. I mean, Harrison Ford can actually be pretty silly in those kinds of scenes. And when you have the CGI monstrosity, it's hard to approximate that. And then, you have lame train gags and like there's things that in Spielberg's hands, you can just imagine he would have done something clever with the gun that goes off and slaughters all the Nazis that Indiana Jones doesn't really have anything to do with. Like, I don't know what Spielberg would have done with that, but he would have had more fun with.
It would have felt fun.
We've got a random gun going off and it's.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Ben, any other thoughts?
Nah, I don't think so.
You were saying beforehand that Helena Shaw is your new favorite character, and Teddy is.
Yeah, I was saying that.
You thought Teddy was so well written and such a You forget Short Round, I think was your.
That's right. The Oscar goes to Teddy.
Can't believe I still remember that character's name.
Well, the movie made you care.
Yes, it did. Raheem, the great villain.
Yeah, the great subplot there.
Raheem.
Did you guys Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did you guys ever crack a smile at any of What's-Her-Face's wisecracks?
No. I don't know that I smiled the whole movie.
There was one line that I liked. I mean, I could tell that this movie, I saw that in the screenwriting credits, the final name, I think, was David Coep, who's written a lot of stuff. And I could tell that the movie someone had tried to punch it up.
Yeah.
I feel like that must have been Coep, because that's the kind of thing he would do, or however you say his name. But there was one line by Helena Shaw I liked. What was it? It was about Rashim. Indy was like, "What do you owe that guy?" And she said, "Bail money and a lifetime of happiness." That was pretty clever. In a good movie, I would have liked it.
I think she's
because
obviously
she was engaged.
She's talented. I mean, I think the only thing standing behind between the audience's affections and Helena Shaw is filmmakers with the humility and with the understanding and without sort of feminist chips on their shoulders, so that you can discipline the character. Like Helena Shaw needs to fall on her face. It's the Katharine Hepburn thing we talked about back.
Exactly.
Katharine Hepburn's so annoying and such an abrasive, shrewish person. But Philadelphia's story starts with Cary Grant like smacking her in the face and pushing her over, and then the whole movie proceeds to do nothing but humiliate her and Maureen O'Hara always did the same thing. I'm comparing Helena Shaw to two of the great screen women ever, but you have these women who play strong, abrasive, kind of annoying characters. And then the movie has the wherewithal to take the wind out of their sails a little bit. And it's not just a feminism thing or a feminine thing. It's like any character. Indiana Jones himself would be insufferable if
he wasn't getting beat up all the time.
If he wasn't getting beaten up all the time, if he didn't sometimes make the wrong choices, if things didn't always go his way. And so if the movie was constantly like, Helena Shaw wants to be this awesome rogue, but she's actually either bumbling and bad at it, or her arrogance gets her into trouble and she suffers for it in a way that we can sympathize with, then we would like her. Our hearts would go
I
out
actually
to her.
want to. I think that Phoebe Waller-Bridge actually deserves a lot of credit
for making the character less insufferable.
Yeah, for making me not walk out of the movie. She's actually a pretty compelling, charming actress. She didn't have anything to play, and I think that she was remarkably not obnoxious, given how obnoxious the character or non-character was written to be, just in terms of the story. Like, she brought some actual charm, some charisma to that role that I just think, let's, as an actress, let's give her a little bit of credit for I don't know.
As an actress, as a comedian, I think she actually delivers those lines well, and they're not bad lines for the most part. This movie has more real wit probably in its dialogue than Crystal Skull does, but it just doesn't matter because you're not connected to.
It doesn't matter.
They didn't draw a character.
I mean, actually, the real counterpoint for Helena Shaw is Marion. And the thing about Marion is that she's mad at Indiana Jones. She's screechy. She's played by an actress of limited range. Everything works. Marion shouldn't be a likable character, and a lot of people don't like Marion. The saving grace of Marion is that she is a woman in a man's world, and the movie plays fair with at least her physicality, such that she's constantly in danger. She's constantly having to outthink people. She's getting manhandled and shoved around and hurt and threatened in such a way that you care. Like, Indiana Jones has someone he needs to rescue. Like, she brings at least physical vulnerability. Marion's smart. She's scrappy. She's feisty. She can usually outthink a villain if she has any time, but the movie doesn't give her all the chips all the time, and therefore you like her and you root for her, even though she's got even though in some ways she's written
got a lot more annoying qualities than Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character does.
Right. But just the fact that she's going to be manhandled by Nazis and they're about to put her eye out, and you think they could probably do it, and she's not just going to smile and like do a backflip or something. They're like, okay, well, I don't want to see this woman's eye get put out. And you could have done similar things with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but she's just super powered the whole time. I don't know that
you didn't have to make her what's-her-face from Temple.
Yeah. No, I think Marion's the perfect, obviously what they were going for, but they just wanted to do the updated, what they saw as modern version of that. And the updated modern version isn't fun because Indiana Jones rescuing Marion gives him something to do. The reason he's got to beat that mechanic that ends up biting it in the propeller is because Marion's trapped in a plane with gasoline that's about to explode. And it creates this thing called suspense, which creates this thing called audience investment. It really helps when some characters aren't super powered fighters. It really actually brings some degree of audience investment. And you can find other ways to make your female character or your kid character strong. Like, we don't just want Willie Scott. Nobody likes Willie Scott. I actually do kind of like Willie Scott. I think she's funny. But like, we're not asking for a Willie Scott.
Yeah.
We're just, all we want is Marion. Or Ilsa. She was a good indie girl.
She was a great indie girl.
Yeah. All right, Ben, how many
fedoras?
Yeah, how many fedoras out of
Tuk-tuks.
Yeah, okay, fine. How many?
I want to give it tuk-tuks.
How many tucks out of 14 tuk-tuks do you give this movie?
I'll give it 2.
2 tuk-tuks. Brutal.
Yep.
You're basically handcuffing this movie underwater and swimming away and letting it drown.
That's what it deserves.
That's what it deserves. Yes, a fine way to dispatch this film. Jake, how many tuk-tuks?
1.
Wow. I'm not even going to joke about giving it 14 tuk-tuks. Yeah. I'd love to give it 0, but it is too competent for that. It doesn't deserve the dignity of 0.
Yeah. If Ryan Johnson made it, maybe we could give it 0.
Right. Like this movie does not rise to the level of hatred. I guess one final question. I'll give it 3 tuk-tuks, I guess. Did you guys like the time travel stuff? Did you get anything out of that? Was that fun or stupid?
No, it was just, it could have been fun.
No.
Like all that stuff could have been fun if we would have like had a little bit of arc music and a little bit of set up and establish. Like you can't trade on, like, okay, the Ark of the Covenant you can, or the Holy Grail, you can trade on some lore and knowledge. You have to do a little bit more work to set it up with something like Archimedes' dial. And so just do that for us. Like, and you weren't getting that in the little archive room with the 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so just like make it special, build some lore out of it, and then have it be part of the actual emotional character arc of Indiana Jones. Like you said, living in the past, that's the whole, okay, well, but they just didn't do any of that legwork at all. It makes no sense. There is no lesson Indiana Jones learns. He has no choices to make. It's just all taken out of his hands. He's just along for the ride like you are. And it's stupid.
Yep.
So it could have been, it could have been fun. It could have been great. They could have done all kinds of things with that little bit of time travel lore if they wanted to. Yeah, but they suck. So
yeah, and for Pete's sake, have Mads Mikkelsen swallow the time stream and then turn into a skeleton or something. We don't need no lame airplane death, and then he's got a gory corpse. Okay, that's not exciting.
Nope.
And his primary white supremacist henchman, who we've seen kill 1,000 innocent people, doesn't get his own special death. I mean, at least have that guy get hit with a spear or something like that. Also, he gunned down lots of. Talk about changing the time stream. Okay, whatever. This movie deserves no further discussion. James Mangold.
Yep.
You suck. You failed.
horrible.
Yep. Harrison Ford versus Ferrari. I don't know what that means. Okay.
Has about as much meaning as this movie.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Until next time.
Oh, for goodness sake. Is there a quotable line in this movie? Why didn't he say it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage?
That would have been a much better if these characters are going to remember some random thing they said 50 years ago. Yep.